Church wants to get to adjourn. He wants to know our. Did you say two?
Through.
Oh, fine, perfect, all right. Yeah,
We're live.
Are we broadcasting?
We are.
8:30.
By that clock right there. T-minus 15 seconds and counting.
That one's wrong.
All right, so we're ready, James?
Yes, sir.
We're recording?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It is, I'll turn my phones on. Maybe I look. 8:30. All right, Steve Jobs says it's 8:30.
We have a quorum. We'll call to order the March 11th, 2020 meeting of the LAMTD Board of Directors. First order of business is approval of the February 12th meeting minutes.
No approval of minutes circulated.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comments. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment? Talk to the board about anything you have on your mind. Seeing none, we'll move to item 3, presentation of the district audit.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce Daniel Anderson from our audit firm, Malden & Jenkins, to present our annual audit. Daniel, the floor is yours. I'd just like to say to the Commissioners, I'm very excited about what he is going to present. And for the board, I know last year there was a lot of tension surrounding pension liability and county paying for that. That will not be an issue this year. So Daniel's here to present the overall audit, but after that, I'm happy to answer questions regarding the pension liability. Daniel?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I must say that's probably a first that I've heard that someone's really excited for me to come up and speak, so I appreciate that. Hopefully each of you have 2 items in your packet, one of which here is the audited financial statements themselves. The other one is the auditor's discussion and analysis. Audit standards require public accounting firms to require certain information to the board of directors at the conclusion of the audit. You can do this written or verbally. We choose to do it through this auditor's discussion and analysis. And my presentation is going to basically be a quick summary of what you'll find in there. Feel free to stop me throughout the presentation and ask me if you have any questions. I will start on page 2. I won't read everything about Malden & Jenkins, which is the firm that is performing your audit, but 2 things that I want to mention. We do audit approximately 50 standalone business type districts that are very similar to the district here, 12 of which are standalone transit authorities similar to the district.
Okay.
Secondly, just a little bit of bragging on ourselves. One of our governmental partners, Joel Black, was recently appointed to be the chair of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So he will be the head of the standard setting entity over all of governmental accounting nationwide. So we're certainly proud of him for that. Jumping to page 4, the main purpose of performing an audit is to provide an opinion on the fairness of the financial statements. Page 4 summarizes what you will see in our audit report that's within the financial statements. First, the financial statements are the responsibility of management. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on those based on the procedures that we perform. In our opinion, we feel that the statements are free of material misstatement. So we did issue an unmodified audit report, which is the highest form of assurance that we can render. Jumping forward, on page 5, in addition to the audit report, there will be 2 other reports that you'll see within the financial statement document. One is the Yellow Book report, which is a report over compliance with laws and regulations under governmental auditing standards. We do not provide an opinion in this report. It's really a form of negative assurance. So the fact that report doesn't say that we found anything wrong is a good thing for the district. Secondly, we did perform 3 single audits as part of our audit procedures based on federal and state expenditures expended by the district. 1 single audit was over federal expenditures, 2 were over state expenditure programs. There were no issues in regard to either of those single audits. Jumping to page 7, and this goes into some of those required communications that I had mentioned previously. In performing our audit, we encountered no difficulties with management. We had no disagreements with management in regards to the application of significant accounting principles. At the conclusion of our audit, we did obtain representations from management that they provided us with all the information that we requested, and it was accurate. Moving to page 8, there were no significant issues discussed with management during the audit process. We're not aware that management had any consultations with other accountants regarding the 2019 financial statements. There were 3 audit adjustments that were recorded during the process of the audit. We communicated these with the district and they reported those without any issues. We are independent with respect to the district, and then we are not aware of any other documents that contain the audited financial statements. Starting on page 9 and really for the rest of the document, it talks about upcoming GASB pronouncements that will be taking effect in future fiscal years. There's nothing significant that will impact the district in fiscal year 20. However, in fiscal year 21, there is going to be a new standard all over the lease accounting, and we will be working with David and Rhonda and their team to make sure that the district is implementing that properly in fiscal year 2021. That's the presentation that I had. If you have any questions about either the auditor's discussion and analysis or the financial statements, I'm happy to answer those now.
Questions?
Of the 3 adjustments, anything material?
No, nothing significant.
Commissioner Lane.
Not today, but perhaps in the future, would you report to us from the other 12 and 15 transit agencies that you audit, if there are any best practices there that we should consider here?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll take a note of and we can bring back to you next time.
Any further questions? Any questions for Tom? Seeing none, this is an approval item.
Move approval that we accept the district independent auditor's audit.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Mr. Prasad.
Good morning. We do have the financial report for LAMTD through the end of January, which represents 4 months or 33% of the fiscal year. Overall revenues are 142% over the budget, 5.2 million, and that's basically driven by the ad valorem taxes, 4.5 million, or 93% of the budget. Farebox revenues is 72%, and again, it's lagging a little. The other major revenues, the FDOT grants and the federal grants, those are lagging a little because we have to accumulate the expenses before we bill them. But overall, we have favorable cash flow in terms of revenues. So looking at it,
On the fare box,
yes.
it's only 72%. Is there a reason for that? And do we anticipate a change to get closer to our budget?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we are going to discuss Farebox as part of our transit system update number 8.
Okay. All right, Mr. Prasad?
Looking at expenses again, the four major expenses, salary and benefits are favorable. We are 15% under the budget. Fuel expenses are within the budget, so is parts and materials and supplies. Overall, our revenues are over expenses 1.9 million, so we have favorable cash flow. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Prasad? Okay.
The next financial statement has to do with the Polk County agreement. And again, our total revenues are 2.6 million, and that's driven by the county match to 1.7 million, and the city contributions that exceeded 100%. Total expenses are 2.224 million, and all expenses for labor costs, operating and contract are favorable.
Questions for Mr. Prasad? All right. Next.
The third financial statement has to do with this transportation disadvantage program. And again, looking at the revenues, it's favorable. We are right on line, 99% or 0.86 million, consistent with the budget. Expenses are under 770,000 or 88%. And overall revenues exceeded expenses by about 90,000. So with the financials are favorable for the TD program as well.
Questions for Mr. Prasad on the TD program? Okay, seeing none. Mr. So,
You want to move on? Okay. The next report is a travel trainer program grant. We're asking the board to approve the resolution. It's a grant that's funded 80% by the federal, 10% by the state, and 10% by the district. Our obligation is $11,000, and we're asking for board approval.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2008.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Phillips.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out that this is not a new position. This is an existing position. It's Ms. Novia Santiago who's here today. So this is simply accepting the grant to fund her position.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
The next resolution is for the current fiscal year state corridor grant. It's 50% match and 30% grant funding. That's in our budget, and the total is 1.5 million. We are asking for board approval.
Move to approve the Federal Transit Administration State Corridor projects.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Phillips.
Again, just since the ledger's here to clarify, this is funding for the state corridor for the Florida Avenue. This is separate from the road diet program, which we'll be discussing later, and the funding for that.
Any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. The next item?
The next grant report is to seek approval of a resolution for the county. And this is for their rural program, total of 1.9 million. It's 50% match and 50% grant, and it's in the budget.
Move
Question?
approval of resolution 20-08.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
And the final report is to seek board approval for the disposal of 5 fixed route buses. They have exceeded a maximum 12 years and 500,000 miles. And we normally auction these off and bring in some revenues. These vehicles have exhausted their useful life
In both age and miles.
on miles.
There are only 600,000 miles on them. Oh, so moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, who's up next?
Mr. Darby.
Legal. So, thank you. As you know, the district and Flixbus Inc. have proposed that Flixbus, which is a New York corporation authorized to do business in Florida, be allowed to use the Gal B. Fields Park and Ride lot for boarding and alighting passengers. I never put the word alighting in any agreement before, but it's here. They are allowed to use it. I had to look it up on Google to make sure what the definition was, but so as you know, that the district owns that park and ride lot. It's about 1.313 acres, and it's to be used solely for a public purpose park and ride lot. The deed by which the property was transferred to the district provides that it be used solely for that purpose. If it's not, then there's a reverter clause that it goes back to the state. So I have put some wording in the agreement here, which you have in your package. It's an agreement for use of park and ride facility. So I've talked to Dan, his last name starts with a Z, who is the managing person at Flixbus, and I've sent him the draft of this agreement, and he's reviewing it. This agreement was prepared based on an agreement that the district has had, I think still has, between the district and the city of Lakeland, under which the district leases the park and ride lot in downtown Lakeland by the fire station. The city owns that property, and we lease that from the city for the park and ride lot. So this agreement really mirrors that agreement, except it's not a lease. It's just allowance for Flixbus to use the property. So that's what this is. And Dan with Flixbus is reviewing it, as I indicated, and he'll get back with me. it's a standard agreement, but it needed to have appropriate provisions in it as to release and liability and indemnification as far as the district is, since they'll be stopping and boarding and alighting passengers on our property.
Very much.
Yes, sir.
What
Liabilities does it not release us from? Anything? I mean, are we, essentially anything they caused to have happen
Yes,
is their issue?
yes, and there's an indemnification provision for that too. Yes.
1-year term, 30 days notice. So we'll be back again annually for,
Yes, sir. It's a 1-year term, and I put a clause in here that it can be terminated on 30 days notice with or without cause. If that's an issue, I'll hear about it, but I think that's in the best interest of the district at this point.
Commissioner Lindsay.
and no automatic renewal then?
No,
It'll-
sir.
It'll come
No,
back
sir.
every year.
No.
So Commissioner Lindsay, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, a 1-year agreement seems to make a lot of sense in so much as that, as you know, the Galfields Park and Ride lot has been a slow and steady process, thanks to our funding partners at DOT. So we are currently completing phase 2. So the first phase was building the park and ride lot, doing the memorial placard, getting it up and running with 1 shelter. Phase 2, which is now complete, is having 2 additional shelters that are out there. Phase 3, which DOT has awarded us the grant and we accepted a few months ago, will be the installation of permanent restroom facilities, a drinking fountain, truly completing the project. At that point, I believe we need to enter into discussions with our private partners. That would be Megabus, Flixbus, and quite frankly, my hope is that we can get Greyhound to start using the facility. And at that point, when we have actual costs, hard costs associated with custodial staff and restrooms, I believe it should be their responsibility
We
to
can share.
proportionately share that burden. Right now, thank you, Chuck, wherever you are, the city's continuing to work with us on allowing those portable restrooms up there so that folks have amenities. I know that's outside of how long they should be there, but that's a cost the district is absorbing. But within a year, when the bathrooms are built, that's something that they should have to help us pay for.
Tom, what exactly is Flixbus? What are the routes? How is it going to help
Yes,
the
sir.
riders in Lakeland and Polk County?
So Flixbus is a European company that first broke into the American market in California. And this is their first route in Florida. They will be, is it 5 or 6 times a day, Aaron? 5 times a day. They will be running between Tampa and Orlando, and it is a flat fee of $4.99. And yes, $4.99.
$4 and then.
$4.99. Yes.
does it go to the airport?
Yeah, where's it go?
I do not know. I should have, Aaron will look it up while we're,
We don't have time points or destinations yet. We just know that we're gonna be the go-between between.
and we're going to be the only stop
On I-4.
on I-4.
Well, if it goes to the
Mirroring
airports,
Virgin.
that would be big.
That's a component of My Ride, My Roads was
That's
always.
their business to say.
Yes, sir. No, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that's not a.
Right. But a big component of My Ride, My Roads was the express buses to the airport. So if the private sector can meet that need, that would be absolutely fantastic. And again, I'll just say for the record, I truly hope that we can see Greyhound come out and partner with us as well, just as Catapult starts opening and really it would save a lot of time and an effort for them.
Are there considerations for parking that we ought to think about if, once this is in place, what happens with people who might park there and go to the airport on that?
So yes, Bill, what are our current standards for,
We do have a phone number posted at the park and ride. They give us a call, let us know their make, the model, the color, where they're going, what their address is. There's a whole form that they fill out. And we make sure that the cars are okay up there. It is fully, it's under surveillance 24/7. And we had one incident where the car was over there for almost 4 months. And we did have it towed and never heard from anybody about it. So
Commissioner,
How many spaces are there?
about 30.
Thank you.
what this catches on to the airports,
Yeah.
Those will be used up
Yes.
quickly.
Yes. And as our Rose Street Park and Ride lot right now is really the joinery parking lot.
I move approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
All right, Marcia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to give an update on our Title VI program for FY 16-19 submission period. Excuse me, sorry. Citrus Connection is committed to meeting the requirements of Title VI for Civil Rights of Civil Rights Act of 1964, which states that no person shall be in the United States shall be under the race or color or nationality be excluded from participating or denied the benefits or be subject to discrimination under any program or activity under federal, receiving federal financial assistance as a part of receiving financials from the department, from DOT, as part of DOT regulations and FTA requirements. LAMTD is well committed to meeting requirements to take reasonable steps to ensure the important portions of their programs and activities for individuals with limited proficiency and minorities in the population. So on page 3, there's a change on there. I listed that the district did not have a subrecipient, but we did have links as a subrecipient because we had contract service out to links. The district certifies under this Title VI that we do have a subrecipient, and that will be. The district works to ensure that we work to ensure there is no discrimination by providing public transportation to all Polk County residents and all citizens in all areas. Citrus Connection has developed a standard of operating procedures to ensure that we are operating the same standard of service throughout the district. And some examples of that is that when able to, we know that we try to create bus sizes for different bus routes depending on what the route is. But when we have buses that can meet the same bus size and the same bus standard, we rotate those buses through so that we're not putting buses that some would deem old in certain neighborhoods. We try to rotate the buses around. We have a tracking report to include procedures for we have a tracking report that would, as a requirement, to ensure that if we receive a complaint, because the 3-year period is a long period, to ensure that we have the ability to make sure that we remember and that we have the form available if they request it. We have a procedure for how to file on our website, and we also have a complaint form. We must keep all records associated with any complaints that we receive, and we must promote inclusive for all public presentation and participation. A few of the updates that we've had in the last 3-year period was that LAMTD did not receive any complaints during this period. We've updated our website under the Civils Right tab. If you go to our website at ridecitrus.com, you click on the icon that says About Us, there's a Civil Rights tab. And that allows customers to go into our website and actually click the link and complete a complaint form via the website, so they don't have to have that in the personal if they're experiencing problems. And they'll be able to email that directly to me. We've not received any investigations through this period. We've created an investigation tracking system in the event that we do receive a complaint. Not just this complaint, but any complaint that we receive. We've increased our public participation throughout in this 3-year span. That's one of the things I reported on the last Title VI, And we didn't have a lot of public outreach, but we've increased it this period. And we've increased the number of bilingual staff by 5 staff members in this last 3 years. We're consistently ensuring that when we create a form, whether it's an application process or there's a document that we translate it, go ahead and make sure that we translate it into Spanish so that if someone needs it, we have it ready available for a customer. Ensure there are no major changes to this document as it compares to last document. The only changes was the increase in public participation, the website changes in which we've actually allowed customers to go in and click the button to make a submission. Changes to the subrecipient. We no longer contract service to links. We have a new subrecipient, and that will be transitions. One of the major changes that we're going to have is that we're going to have a new census period. So we'll be interested to see how our 2010 census will be compared to the new census that we have. And Reroute 2020 is creating some service changes goals that we need to look into and make some adjustments so that we'll be able to make sure that our goals are not so far off that we're not meeting none of our marks on there. And that's it. Here for any questions.
I have a question for Mr. Phillips. We were in a meeting yesterday and a number was thrown out as a hypothetical of 750,000 potential in this census. How does that affect the district?
So the biggest change would be if the census is, if people participate, then our expectation, and I think, Chuck, the expectation at the city is, and I know it is at the TPO, but correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Lakeland and Winter Haven urbanized areas will become one UZA, one urbanized area. So right now we receive our federal funds come from 2 pots, the Lakeland urbanized area and the Winter Haven urbanized area. When we merged, FDOT merged the pot and gave it to us. So our federal funding formula will effectively change as we become one large urbanized area.
Will that increase the funding, decrease the funding, or let the funding stay approximately level?
If the population goes up, I'm sorry, the merging of the 2 areas into one UZA should not increase or decrease the funding. Our population growth should increase the funding. We're a bit ahead of the game from a transit perspective, I believe, because we've already worked with the leadership of this board to fairly proportion out the state funds from FDOT to make sure that East is getting what they should and West should get what they should. So we'll follow that same suit if we become one large urbanized area, which is why we are so encouraging everyone to fill out the census. Ms. Killebrew worked with, I'm not sure which organization, but I know we have a census bus, or Pulp Vision. So we have a bus that's actually encouraging people to fill out the census.
I was behind that bus the other day.
We actually have 10 buses that have it on
Well, I was only behind one of them.
That's enough.
Mayor Mutz.
Marcia, thank you for your preparation on this report and the work that goes into that and the compliance. Anything challenging to you at all that we're not addressing as wholly as you wish we were?
Not really. I think the census is the only thing that we'll look at just to see how much of a change it's going to be for us, because right now we only really focus on English and Spanish. I don't see that being, another language being a real burden for us. But if another language just gets really high, we may have to put our focus on another language and start to translate other languages.
Got it.
But outside of that.
Great.
Okay. Any further questions? This is an approval item.
Yes, it is.
Move approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number, thank you. Item number 7. Mr. Don.
Mr. Dunn, Mr. Sims. I'd like to introduce.
They look like twins.
I was going to say, I'd like to introduce Aaron Dunn and Paul Sims, the best dressed people in the district.
Well, we try to dress this way because we represent our wonderful people here. So out of respect for them, we want to look our best.
We're just all trying to keep up
And a
with Paul.
military background.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. We're here this morning to present a review and analysis of the route changes from Reroute 2020 and how it has impacted our ridership.
So a brief summary of the changes that we made through Reroute 2020 include, we added 98 hours of new service throughout the weekday service time. We also converted all 11 routes in the Lakeland area into 8 combined routes. And we eliminated 10 transfer points throughout our system, where we had 36 transfer points in our system last year, and now we have 26.
Great.
This change is the predominant reason why we anticipated a decline in ridership, and we would like to present that impact now.
Currently, ridership is down 8.8% system-wide. As a point of reference, transit in general nationwide is down by 9%.
Okay, so while our old system has an 8.8% decline in ridership, currently the ridership in the East County routes or everywhere except Lakeland is only down 4.4%. Now this indicates that while factors like a strong economy are impacting our ridership decline, there is certainly causation from the Lakeland area that has impacted our ridership now.
So currently, ridership in Lakeland is down by 11.2%. There are 2 main factors that contribute to these downturn.
The first main factor is the elimination of the transfer points. So if you guys remember last year when we presented this to the board, we had this cool system guide when we went on our field trip. And on that field trip, we gave an example. I'd like to use that example to explain how that's interacting with our ridership now. So that example was at 3:15, a citizen got off work at the Lakeside Village. They had to go to Morgan Creek. In order to do that, they had to take the 15 north to the terminal, and then they had to transfer to the 14. So under that example, that's 2 rides. Now that same citizen this year, where last year they went to work and went home, that's 4 trips. That same citizen this year is only 2 trips.
So what we've learned is that changing routes is not a transition and rather not an abrupt change. So we want to highlight the importance of continued community outreach efforts.
So while understanding the causes of it is important, it's simply not enough. We need to also understand how we measure how these changes are impacting our transit services. So if you remember last year when we discussed the potential impact of this, one of the things we talked about was measuring our unduplicated headcount. And what that tells us is even though ridership may decline, we really want to look at transit participation. As you can see, transit participation this year compared to last year is relatively unchanged. And that's good because it shows there's not an accompanying decline of transit participation with ridership. However, it's also kind of bad because there's not been an increase in transit participation, which is our overall goal.
In analyzing transit participation and its ridership reveals 2 important implications for us. 1, community outreach efforts must be targeted and reinforced. 2, we must continue to evaluate and prepare to provide increased service to our communities as needed.
So we're talking about our targeted outreach effort. This is really what we're talking about. And really essentially what this boils down to, the graph that you see on the screen before you, is that riders are just not utilizing the extended weekday hours as they do the existing daytime hours. As you can see by our metrics here, those extended trips where they used to end at 5:15 all the way 7:45 is where the ridership is the weakest. Now, that's not us to say that that's okay. It just because it's anticipated to have a decline, it's still important to narrow down where it is and what's going on. This again speaks to the transition period. As many of you know, people build their lives around transit. We're 4 months into this. So we're not saying that like this is the new normal. What we're saying is this is where we need to target our efforts.
So as we continue to make targeted outreach efforts, to increase evening ridership. Some of the causation factors that have blended service include increasing frequency, increasing Saturday service, currently considered extended routes, or alternative routes.
At this time, we're not suggesting that we take any of these measures. We just wanted to report to the board and highlight what we're considering as we look at it. So for example, we've extended 97 hours a week. We want to make sure that we're decided to use those resources in the best possible way. Again, it's still early and we're still working towards increasing the participation in the transit, especially in those targeted areas. But these are the things that we will be considering as we move forward. I do want to mention, I think you alluded to it earlier, Tom, when we looked at the unduplicated headcount originally for this, I had a little, as I say, sometimes a little mini heart attack. Because it appeared it was a little bit off, right? But what we had to incorporate was the bus pass program. And I talked to Cindy last week about that. And that really coincides with two things. One, making sure we're getting an accurate count of how many people are participating. So our transportation disadvantage bus pass program has had significant increase over this 4 months compared to last year, to the tune of 363 people last year to over 480, almost 500 people this year. That does two things. That keeps that participation up, which is really helping us right now. But the other thing it does is it impacts fare box ratio. Because for the citizen, the end user, when they become eligible for that program, they receive a monthly bus pass. That is a value of $50. Does not mean that the district isn't getting that money. We're getting that money in the TD billing, which is a monthly process that we do to the TD program every single month. But it can impact, in this case, slightly over 100 times $50 a bus pass, give or take, per month. So it does have an impact on that. That completes our presentation. We're available for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Dunn or Mr. Sims? Commissioner Lindsay.
Previously, you were measuring rides, like the example, someone had to make a transfer work that would represent 4 rides, and now it's the same person being served the same quality of service, perhaps better.
Yes.
It only counts as 2.
Correct.
But counting riders and not ridership, then we're about flat.
We're flat, exactly. I think there was a difference of 3. I didn't read the
But
exact number.
it's more
3 more.
convenient.
Indeed.
Mayor Buck.
On the heels of that same question, do we have national comparisons to that number, to ridership?
That's not something that we've looked into more. We need to. That's a great idea, and that's something that we're definitely going to do. We do, the national comparisons we mentioned was just as a benchmark.
Right.
That's an interesting number because as we saw the 4.4% decrease in the rest of the service, there's other things going on for sure. We'd all like to believe we made the service better, everybody works now, doesn't need a bus. But we know better. There is an overall something going on. And a good example of that is New York City. In New York City, when they have economic increase, they got a ridership increase because everybody has to ride the bus or public transit in some way. When you take New York out of the numbers, it's 9% nationwide. You put New York back in it, they got so much transportation going on in there that it brings the numbers all the way down to like 7%.
But unless the other measured systems adopt a 2020 type model, we're still comparing apples and oranges.
Exactly. It's very difficult, but we do need to do that. To the mayor's point, that's something we will do before back.
Mayor Buck.
Second question. What incrementally would the Saturday service cost be roughly? Do we know?
Well, we think the cost would be the same thing. Our ridership hour cost per hour is still $106 an hour, I believe.
Went up slightly.
It went up slightly, so that's a ballpark. But it's something we can do because resources is resources. And we're not saying it's time to abandon ship, but what we are saying is we got to be smart about it. If we put through a lot of work and effort to get the most out of this, the most juice we can out of this thing, out of the citrus, right? That was a good example. We need to make sure we're using it in the right ways. And it may be a blend. That's why we listed all the things that we look at. It may not be we say all the routes need to stop. Maybe just one particular route.
Right.
If you could go back to that graph real quick, please, James. You can see there's a lot going on in here that we realize. For example, look at the Silver Line. That thing is killing it, right? The more we can keep that on an express route, the better it's going to do. People want to travel from city to city, and that allows the inner city routes to do what they're designed to do. Another good example is the Green Line. Some of the efforts we had there, Ms. Killebrew got Tom and I to Polk State College, and we met with them and informed them about how it goes later. They have 2 days a week, Wednesday and Friday, where students weren't going to class. They were considering stopping it. But now that they can get to the bus there, we've seen, and you can even tell on the Green Line I'm talking about? Look at the ridership there. So there's an opportunity there. Another thing we've done is Ms. Kilbrew got us also with all the colleges. And so we're trying to get that outreach out there and let them be the awareness of it. Some of it could be, and this is speculation, but some of it could be people ask for stuff. Sometimes people ask for stuff and then the end results of that aren't really, for example, they say, we need recycling bins here. We put recycling bins out. And then we go to dump the recycling bins and guess what? Nobody's recycling. So we don't really know, but we got to continue to monitor it and then make adjustments as necessary.
Simply ask the question, when and where do you want to go?
Well, we want to keep doing this. We want to.
I mean, when you ask the colleges, when and where do you want to go?
Oh,
And
exactly.
see if there's enough demand to.
And some give and take there. For example, Florida Southern College has had some difficulties getting their transit. We've made our services available to them, met them a couple times. Like, we got to play ball. You know, we got to show them what we can do for them. Chuck Barnaby is another good example, taking us last week to Orlando to help people. Anytime we can get there and explain to them what we can do for them, that's like the starting point. But then we can't let up. We're going to keep doing it. Yes, sir.
Very much.
2 questions. Florida Poly, have we talked to them at all, and would it help us in any of this or not necessarily?
Yeah, of course it would help us. And we have had, they were at that meeting with the group, were they not? They were. We have not had a follow-up with them as of yet.
Because I think we have an opportunity if we press on that a little.
We especially do with the Advent Health or the Florida Hospital going in across the street from them. They advertise on our buses. So that's going to be an opportunity with them specifically. But if we say, you know, they're coming in, we need you to come back.
They're not strongly married to what they're doing. So,
Okay.
I mean, I think we have an opportunity there. And second is there any room at all incrementally to start some Saturday service anyway?
At this point, we would have, it'd be where do we remove it from?
Okay.
This information here will tell us where is the best,
I got it.
where's the most studious place to make those decisions. That's something that I would advocate for. Given once the board reached a place where they felt confident that we have done everything we can to do it in the current way, and then a change in direction, we would take that direction. We're very confident we could do that. And we can do it in a way that would minimize how much we remove. Growth is the best way to do it though.
Sure. Wi-Fi's on how many units?
0.
Yeah.
We had the one pilot. We have the data from that pilot, and we had planned on presenting that data to the board at the strategic planning retreat.
Anything else for Mr. Don or Mr. Sims? Thank you, gentlemen. I have some questions, Tom, but it's for you.
All right.
We have Sun and Fun coming up. We were at the mayor's breakfast just recently. And that was a good meal, by the way.
Good.
Whoever did that was a good meal.
Personally.
And yeah, I don't want to get up that early and have a bad meal, so.
That's good. That wasn't until 7:30.
Anyway, Sun and Fun's coming up. And Aaron just mentioned Morgan Creek as a stopping point. Are we doing anything now with Sun and Fun to move people from where they're staying in the downtown area to Sun and Fun?
So we still have our, Mr. Dunn?
Well, as far as a special request from the Sun and Fun board or anything like that, no, sir.
I can talk to that.
However, the red line is much different than it was before. Instead of the half dozen trips per day, we now run there every single time on every loop of the day. So we go there 13 times a day now. So this year they have probably a 30% increase in service to their facilities from downtown to the airport than they did in any year before.
Mr. Chairman, I've been working with Lights for 2 or 3 years, and we're getting closer and closer every year to running a true express from the Sun and Fun campus to downtown Lakeland to try to push that economic development there directly. So it's something we are working on.
Good. Second, coronavirus. Are we putting any type of hand sanitizers inside of the bus, any wipes inside of the bus, anything? I know it's on the news every night when I turn it on, coronavirus, and what are we doing, if anything, that will help our riders?
At this point, Mr. Chairman, we're taking every measure possible. Yesterday, we filled about 120 bottles, Paul and I personally, bleach solution water, wipes, everything we can get our hands on, Lysol spray, posting everywhere for information for riders. We're getting calls from riders too, through the External Affairs Department. Susan Alfano's been getting calls. We're trying to meet any special requests people make. Some of the other measures we've made is allowing them to bring their own sanitizer and chemicals. That's something that previously aerosols on the bus is kind of a no-no, so to speak, and that's kind of industry-wide. So we're doing every measure we can. As far as like a strategic plan, the plan is really to run as long as we can. Should it ever escalate to the point where we have to talk about something significant, the concern there is when would it ever stop? So our goal is to take every measure possible, continue to do so, and as long as possible.
Okay, thank you. All right, that was an information item. We'll move on to item number 8.
9.
Is it 9? No, I've got 8.
Transit buses.
2.
Purchase 2 buses.
Oh, because I still had something on the agenda. Never mind.
Jane and Joe, good.
Yeah, Joe, sorry. Jane?
Didn't print out the board agenda right, but basically we have been awarded a grant from the state on the road diet, and this is to supplement the cost of equipment. So you have the figures in front of you for what that looks like. These buses would be different in that they would be smaller, they're narrower and shorter. They have a capacity of 2 wheelchair and up to 10 ambulatory, and they would fit nicely on the narrow roads that the road diet is proposed to ride on. So I think that and after the grant is done, I think these buses could service in other areas as well.
In the meantime, board members, we do have 2 new paratransit vehicles that will be used for the road diet while these vehicles are on order.
When would you expect delivery?
Somewhere between July and September.
Further questions, Mayor?
These are not the ones that we got to take a look at that you had trouble ordering.
No. So that brings about 2 answers. One is this is completely different. It is a Ford Transit. It's narrower. It's a high floor vehicle. Has a side load. Wheelchair lift. The vehicle that we did look at that you're referring to is a New England Wheels vehicle. It's not available on any state contract. So I am in process of writing the scope of work.
I love that vehicle.
Bid it out ourselves. And it's interesting that there is a competitor. So we should have competition in the bid.
Good.
So
The difference between those 2 vehicles, having to lift the wheelchair up on a lift and bring it in and the counterweights, all that versus the ease of entry on the New England is dramatic.
very dramatic. It reduces the boarding time. Okay, so people get on and on quicker. The layout inside the vehicle is much better than any of the high floor buses we have. And it will move us into low floor in the smaller bus market. Okay, and our intent is to use them in fixed route. So we have a capacity of 14 ambulatory, 2 wheelchair, and we can run light. Those vehicles on a trip from New England down to here, somewhere averaged around 16 miles per gallon.
That's great.
Okay, which on that size vehicle is very good. So, so it's kind of like I think it's an economic move. Okay, we're right sizing it.
But our timing's off on this.
I don't know that it's off. I think that the timing actually might be good in that we find that we have a nice, convenient, welcoming type vehicle, maybe it will attract riders. Okay, I'm also hoping that in the future, if we have capacity issues, that maybe there might be a consideration where capacity issues are addressed with frequency. Okay, which would then make it even more attractive.
My question, Joe, is our timing's off on this bid though, on this.
Oh, all right.
These
Yeah.
aren't, they're mutually exclusive.
Absolutely.
Further question or comment? This is an approval item.
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Now we'll do number 9.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Bringing before you today our updated policy prohibiting weapons. We've had a policy in place for many years, a weapon policy. This particular policy is effectively the same policy, but allows the exception for our customer-facing employees to carry either pepper spray or pepper gel as a self-defense item. As we went through the development of this updated policy, it was heavily researched, working in conversations with our employment law attorney, our insurance carrier, as well as conversations with the union, because violation of this policy has a tangible employment outcome. So we had to engage a number of individuals with it. So I have included that policy in your packets. The exception as it relates to the chemical self-defense spray, which is effectively pepper spray or pepper gel, is outlined in this policy and is open for discussion for any questions that you might have.
Question?
Seems reasonable.
Yeah, I would also add at this time that for the Florida legislature, there is House Bill 951 and Senate Bill 1460, which is Florida, they're seeking to implement regulations to protect transit operators. Those bills at this time are stalled in the legislature. So I think this is a fairly reasonable and timely consideration to have a policy update.
And guideline section 2, I know that list may seem extensive and possibly awkward. We were informed by our employment attorney that these weapons listed in guideline section 2 are specifically prohibited by Florida state law on all state public university campuses. So since we serviced multiple Polk State College locations, that's why we added that list. Although it may be legal to carry those things, the drivers on those routes would technically be violating the law if they had any of those. So that's the only other change.
Move approval of staff recommendation.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Oh, Jim.
Okay. I would also like to take a addendum to the agenda, which is not printed. And I would like to take a moment to talk about our Going the Extra Mile award nomination, which we received. And it was regarding a individual who, as a bus operator, always held the highest standards for customer safety, service, and performance. He continued his positive attitude towards his peers and customers alike and was visible in everything he did when he came to work. He was always reported to work, ready to go to work, prepared, interacted well with everyone. He was considered a huge asset at Citrus Connector as an operator. He would then later request a promotional position and became a dispatcher. He has always continued to then make a great impact as with other operators, with supervisors. He, having the knowledge, being an operator, that was certainly an advantage for him because he understands what information needed to be relayed and did that exceptionally well. He's always finishing his radio transmissions with "Have a safe day," and is well known throughout the organization as someone who comments about he's living the dream. And I want to add in conversation, he is here today, and I engaged him and I said, good to see you. he attends these board meetings off the clock because he wants to keep up to date with what's going on with the decision makers here at Citrus Commission. Everybody in this room knows who it is, and it gives me great pleasure and great honor to recognize Charles Reeve, who is here. Like to get a picture with you. Sure.
All right, you guys can look a little happier than that, Charles. Look like you live in the dream, Charles. Thanks,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, you're all in. It's not important. Do you have the sheet for the union signatures?
I do.
Can we start distributing that one?
The next item is agency updates. Mr. Phillips,
Yes, sir.
can I ask you to also update us on Elder Point Ministries?
Yes.
See where we are with that.
Yes, I had a conversation with Jane Hammond, the executive director of Elder Point Ministries, earlier this week. And Ms. Hammond has informed me that she will be making the first quarter and second quarter payments by March 31st. So we anticipate having that check in hand shortly, and that her and her board are dedicated to making sure that the payments are prompt and on time thereafter. So that situation has been
Wonderful.
Happily resolved. I'd like to thank the team. Mr. Mayor, I know you and I have talked about it on multiple occasions, being more visible within the community. And so the external relations team and James is working on getting us out with the road show again. Truly, so if any of you are members of Kiwanis, Rotary, League of Women Voters, any other groups, neighborhood organizations, it would be helpful if you'd let them know that we're willing to talk to those groups. Obviously, the carrot for Lakeland is that we can talk about the road diet and talk about the shuttle and what we're doing. That may be something of interest to the Lakeland community. On the east side of the county, we have had so many tech advancements, whether it be the M-Pass mobile ticketing, the ability to text next bus stop, the Avail system. That's all news to the east side of the county, so we can talk about tech opportunities there as well. The recent investments that the county's made in the two new transit routes that are there, and what we're doing to try to alleviate congestion on the 27 corridor. And then, of course, we can always talk about Brightline.
What is the ridership on those two new routes? Are they encouraging?
The two routes on the east side of the county?
Yeah, transitions.
Yes, they're growing. They were struggling with the 16X, and they've made tremendous efforts. So are they where they would need to be? No, sir, not yet. But they are improving, which is encouraging to me.
I want to just say thanks to the staff. I think today really highlights that it takes a team to run this organization, from having a completely clean audit to Marcia's work with Title VI, to operations, to government relations. I can't thank this team enough. And we're so blessed to have such a phenomenal team, and everybody in here is working so well. I am at this point planning a trip out of the country in 2 weeks to Ecuador. I'll be monitoring that situation. There'll be an acting executive director while I'm gone. And if there's a need to cancel that trip due to Corona, I'll do that. Or if there's a responsibility to self-quarantine when I get back, I would obviously let the board know about that. The board retreat, we would like your permission to move from the April board meeting to the May board meeting. The county facilitator was unavailable. Dr. Ross was unavailable. And the quote that we received from an organization was $16,000, which is not going to happen.
Makes them unavailable.
So the May 13th board meeting is when it's normally scheduled. Circle B is available. And I'm happy to say that Dr. Larry Ross for a very nominal fee is willing to travel to be our facilitator. So with your permission, we'd like to move it to May 13th because quite frankly, we don't have a facilitator for April.
That's our city retreat.
It's our city retreat and a Florida Southern College trustee meeting that morning. And so, which is one of us. When would our retreat be over?
What time would it be over?
We were planning on having it end at lunch.
So if our city commission
Is it
business
1?
planning retreat is at 1,
Yes.
So we could start it earlier and end it earlier. If that
11:30.
works? Yes. Okay. James, you got that?
Yep.
Excellent. And then
I can't.
What does early mean?
7 o'clock.
Don't ask us.
I'm sorry. For Paul Sims and Bill Canarium, that's like 2 o'clock in the morning. 7 a.m. work? Okay, we'll have breakfast and we'll have lunch. And then finally, Commissioner McCarley shared a interesting article with me. Developments continue at Hart. Their executive director was terminated. But the most recent update is absolutely exorbitant meal and travel budgets. And I just wanted to clarify that that is not the case at this organization. We continue to be as frugal as we can. So no one's staying at the Ritz-Carlton or the Four Seasons. And I can promise you that nobody's eating at Burns Steakhouse. So Mr. Mealy prefers the downtown diner, which is much cheaper. So we continue to try to run this frugally. And then that is the end of my comments. However, Mr. Chairman, we do have a couple of citizens that have joined us. And I believe they have something they'd like to cover under public comment at some point.
Well, yes, we'll get to them shortly. I was just looking at the UAP ridership, and it appears as though they're all up with the exception of the Peace River, that appears to be down 36 just between December and January. So everything appears to be headed in the right direction.
It is, with the glaringly disappointing numbers of Polk County Public Schools. And that is just something that we continue to work with Superintendent Byrd on. Those numbers should be 3 or 4 times what they are. I mean, look at New Beginnings numbers compared to the public high school. And it's just a awareness and top of mind.
Yes. All right, thank you. Anything for Mr. Phillips? Questions?
Did you want me to make a creative advertising report in this or not?
I think we're okay.
All right, good.
Oh, and then, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Rodney. We have our transportation summit coming up. This is an opportunity for the community to be able to come out and tell us what good quality public transportation looks like to them. It's members of the public sector, members of the private sector. We've got a great response, and that date is March 18th. And we're having that at Polk State College. Public safety.
130 RFP.
Okay.
However, Commissioner Lindsay, this is not a run-up to another referendum attempt. This is simply to update My Ride, My Roads. I'm sorry, My Ride, and hear from the community.
Well, you would be surprised how much support there is out there, as we just heard yesterday from a leadership group. So just stay tuned on that.
Yeah, wait till after the election.
All right, anything else for Mr. Phillips? Any other items? Typically, we have our public comment at the beginning of the meeting. However, we had 2 members of the public came in.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Chairman. I do have one more item. Ms. Killebrew just reminded me. I apologize. For complete transparency with the board. When we did Reroute 2020, you authorized up to $55,000 for the signage associated with Reroute 2020. Thanks to our procurement department, we spent much less than $50,000. There's approximately $20,000 still sitting there. That would allow us to be able to update the signs on the east side of the county as well, meeting 2 major accomplishments. Number 1, it allows us to further introduce the Citrus Connection brand as the brand that's going to be on the east side of the county. Number two, and more importantly, it allows us to do the text bus stop number on the east side of the county. Right now, if you're on the east side of the county, you have to know your bus stop number. This will allow us to do that. So the board authorized up to $55,000 for signage, but it was specifically for Reroute 2020. I would like to know if the board is okay with us spending the remainder of those funds to update the signage on the east side of the county. You've already authorized the funds, but it was specifically for Reroute.
Move approval of the staff request.
Second.
Thank you. Now I'm done.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of staff request being approved to use money on the east side of the county?
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go, Mr. Phillips.
Mr. Chairman, I have another obligation. I'm gonna have to leave a little early, and I look forward to hearing from staff the
I'll
citizens'
follow up with you.
concerns. Thank you.
All right, if you would, please. Are we recording?
Yeah, the other guy.
We can catch him from here?
Yes.
Okay, if you would, give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeffrey Bradley, and I'm an old transit riding hand. I cut my teeth in a New York City subway system, so I've been getting around a long time, and I haven't been able to drive since 1986. So that out of the way, I just want to give you my bona fides so that you understand I know my way around transit systems. I think you have a very fine operation here. There's much to be said for it. You know, I can see the enthusiasm, and I appreciate it as a rider because I ride the system quite frequently, the Blue Line being at this point my favorite or my best line. Recently, I had a less than pleasant experience, and without getting into names, because I'm not here to traduce any driver or any rider, but if it happened to me, I must assume that it's happened to others, and they don't have the same capacities and abilities like myself to come and address and see if we can't make things better. That is a solution. Now, I know bus policies are prohibitive if you're between stops that you don't get picked up. This is understood. In my own case, I was in a residential area. The bus, because of rerouting, there's a lot of construction there lately. I was unsure, got the stick, always with me, got the iPad, so there's no mistaking that I need a bus ride. I'm going to need some kind of information at least. At any rate, this bus driver pulled up at the stop sign. She had to, and I was right between two stops. I could see the one in front of me and the one behind. She stopped, so I went like this towards the door. It's, again, a quiet residential street. She looked at me, she looked away, and she drove on. Now imagine my surprise. I think, what am I, chopped liver standing over here? So I take off because I can still maneuver pretty good with this, you know, visual sight or not, I can still, you know, move, especially when I'm impelled to by frustration. But anyway, I was running down to the next stop because she also stopped there. Now, the kind thing, or even the best thing, would have been open the door and say, I can't pick you up here, it's against regulations. Okay. Next thing, best thing would have been, meet me down there. You know, it was like 10 steps. Literally from me to this gentleman here was the next bus stop. And she saw me holding my behind down there to get it. I didn't want to wait another hour for us. At any rate, again, nothing. I'm like, you know, this is obviously not a good way to do public service. Just ignore the person. I don't know. So at any rate, I did have reason to catch up with her on my travels because I do use the bus. When I asked her why she did that, well, you weren't at the bus stop. And I let it go because the person behind the wheel is not somebody I'm going to engage in my frustration or anger or anything else. I just made comment that was probably the least wise move she could make. At the very least, common courtesy would open the door, can't pick you up, sorry, you know, anything. So again, if it happens to me, I have to imagine that it's happening. So I hesitate to call it a systemic problem, but I would imagine they're being told that under no circumstances can you, even engage people that are not at the stop. That might be a policy you want to amend, like everything. There's times and places where that could be. There would, again, if I was in the middle of Kathleen Boulevard or Memorial Highway, I can understand. I missed the bus. But at a quiet residential street like that, there was no need of it. As an addendum, when I wrote to it, now I had to, kind of wreck my day, put me behind. It was raining. The blue bus up by the Salvation Army runs like once every 3 hours. So effectively wrecked my day. I had to go home. I meant to write to the on the email and my experience. And again, I don't abuse people because nobody listens. They go into their shell. But it needed to be said, so I gave the particulars there. But I heard not a word back. I've had other questions too. I'm kind of segueing here. I've had other questions too about riding the bus or how the blue line, if anybody is familiar with the blue line here, that's, I used to call it north, kind of a nutsy cuckoo line. It doesn't make any sense. So when I asked about it, I got no response. So whoever extension 2015 is, they need to at least once in a while return a phone call. Because on your website, it says how great you are. And again, I appreciate that, and that's altogether true. But there's a dissonance if we can't get a response to our questions. It just leaves the rider frustrated. Again, I'm very adaptable. I can find my way, But it also brought me here because I think you need to understand that there are some glitches, flaws, bumps in the road that you're trying to get. And I hear about the community outreach and all. Here's the community reaching back to you. And again, not to get people in trouble, but perhaps to look into a little bit different of a policy would be a good thing. That's pretty much what I want to have to say. I want to end it on, I'm going to be taking the bus here to my gym and things, and it's a great ride. I can depend on you. You're on time. I like the little app stuff. I mean, waiting for a bus back in the last century was like waiting for a bus. It was like waiting for the covered wagon. Now it's a lot better. I do appreciate all your efforts.
No, it just goes by.
But believe me, I'm a big guy, and when I'm waving my stick, and you look at me and you look away, and then you take off, I can imagine a little old lady in a scooter or something. The frustration level is, beyond description. I have other things, I've done transit boards, but I'll save them for that transit meeting. But that's basically what I have to say, that it was a very unnecessary, unpleasant experience. I'm sure you can address that to the ridership's benefit without stopping in the middle of, I-4 to pick people up. There's got to be between the two. There must be a middle ground. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope something can come of it.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor Mutz.
I have just one question. Was this one driver one time?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
that's a good thing, not
Yes.
to make an excuse for.
That's why I'm not giving you any particulars.
Right.
Might have been a bad day, everybody can have a bad day.
Sure.
It's just that bad days when you're waiting for public service can be awfully bad days.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Radley, thank you so much, sir, for
Thank you for hearing.
for sharing it. We've got multiple staff here who can meet with you afterwards, and I apologize for the experience that you had. What concerns me most as the leader of the organization is it sounds like we failed you at multiple touch points, not just one. It wasn't just that the bus passed you up, the driver didn't communicate, but then whoever's at that extension wasn't returning your calls, and that's what's concerning. So we'll have staff meet with you afterwards if you have time, and we'll make sure that these issues get addressed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anything else from the board or from our director? Seeing nothing, motion to adjourn? No, I'm asking for
So
a motion.
moved.
I can't-
So moved. Wait a second, yeah.
A second. We'll do it quietly.
Just so quiet.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you. And thank you.
I can't make that motion.
Half an hour.